The millionaire's 10-year-old son failed every test until the maid's 7-year-old daughter taught him a secret that changed his life. Before we start, whether you're having your morning coffee or getting ready for bed, you're exactly where you need to be. If this message finds you well, please like and subscribe to our channel for more thoughtful content. The glass trophy case in the Maxwell Mansion's grand foyer shattered with a deafening crash. 10-year-old Ethan Maxwell stood frozen, his report card trembling in his small hand as shards of crystal sparkled across the Italian marble floor. His father, billionaire tech mogul James Maxwell, towered over him, face contorted with rage. "What is wrong with you?" James snatched the paper, voice reverberating off the vaulted ceiling. "F's across the board? Again? After 4 private tutors and the most expensive education money can buy?" Ethan's shoulders hunched inward, his blue eyes filling with tears he desperately tried to contain. "I tried, Dad. I really tried." "Clearly not hard enough." James crumpled the report card, tossing it aside. "This family doesn't tolerate failure, Ethan. Maxwell Technologies wasn't built by failures." From the shadows of the adjacent hallway, 7-year-old Sofia Rodriguez watched silently, clutching her worn notebook to her chest. Her mother, Elena, the Maxwell's housekeeper of 3 years, was hurriedly sweeping up the glass shards, head bowed, pretending not to hear the confrontation. "Sir," Elena ventured cautiously, "should I prepare dinner now or—" "Not now," James snapped, not even glancing her way, "and clean this mess up properly." He turned back to Ethan. "No computer, no games, no swimming pool, nothing until you prove you're worthy of the Maxwell name." As James stormed off toward his home office, Ethan crumpled to the floor, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Sofia hesitated, then stepped from the shadows. Her mother shot her a warning glance, but Sofia moved forward anyway, kneeling beside the devastated boy. "I could help you," she whispered, her dark eyes serious beneath a fringe of black bangs. "I'm good at school stuff." Ethan looked up, wiping his nose with his sleeve. "You're just a little kid." Sofia's expression didn't change. "I'm 7, and I can do calculus." "Sofia," Elena hissed, "come help me with this glass." But Ethan was staring at the girl curiously now. "You're lying." Sofia shrugged, opening her notebook. Inside were complex equations, far beyond elementary school level. Ethan's eyes widened. "How did you learn this?" "I just see it," Sofia said simply. "Numbers make pictures in my head." For the first time that day, a spark lit in Ethan's eyes. "Could you really help me?" Sofia nodded solemnly. "But it's a secret. My mum says people treat you different when they know." From his office, James Maxwell's voice boomed through the intercom. "Ethan, get in here now!" Ethan stood quickly, suddenly looking terrified again. As he turned to leave, Sofia grabbed his wrist. "Meet me in the garden house tonight. 8 o'clock, she whispered. "I'll show you how to see the numbers." Ethan glanced at her doubtfully, then at his father's office door. "Why would you help me?" Sofia's eyes were ancient in her young face. "Because nobody helped me." As Ethan walked toward his father's office, Sofia returned to her mother's side. Elena's expression was a mixture of fear and resignation. "What have you done, Mija?" she whispered. Sofia watched Ethan's slumped shoulders disappear through the heavy oak door. "Something important, Mama." Behind that door, neither of them could see James Maxwell picking up the phone, his voice cold as ice. "Dr. Harrington? It's James Maxwell. My son's failed again." "No, the current arrangements aren't working. I want him tested for everything. Find what's broken and fix it. Money is no object." What James didn't know was that the solution to his son's problems wasn't going to come from expensive doctors or prestigious institutions. It was waiting in a garden house, in the form of a 7-year-old girl with ancient eyes and a mind that could see numbers as pictures. The Maxwell Estate Garden House stood at the far end of the manicured grounds, a Victorian structure of glass and iron that housed exotic plants in winter. Tonight it glowed with faint lamplight as Ethan approached, his heart hammering. He'd snuck out after his father had retreated to his study with a tumbler of whiskey and a video conference call with Tokyo. "You came." Sophia's voice startled him as he entered. She sat cross-legged on a cushion between towering ferns, her notebook open before her. "I'm desperate," Ethan admitted, dropping his backpack. "Dad's talking about sending me to some boarding school in Switzerland if I don't improve." Sophia nodded solemnly. "Sit." She patted the cushion beside her. "First, I need to know how you see numbers." Ethan frowned. "I don't see them. They're just there, boring, meaningless." "Everything means something," Sophia said with surprising authority. "Close your eyes." Reluctantly, Ethan obeyed. "Picture the number 8, Sophia instructed. "Okay, it's just an 8. Is it standing up or lying down?" Ethan's brow furrowed. "Standing up, I guess." "What color is it?" "It doesn't have a—" Ethan stopped, suddenly seeing a faint blue tinge to the number in his mind. "Wait, it's kind of blue." Sophia smiled. "Good. That's how it starts." For the next hour, Sophia led Ethan through exercises unlike anything his expensive tutors had attempted. She didn't drill him on multiplication tables or force him to memorize formulas. Instead, she taught him to see patterns, to feel the relationships between numbers. "Math isn't about memorizing," Sophia explained, sketching rapidly in her notebook. "It's about seeing the dance." "The dance?" Ethan was skeptical. "Everything dances together. Watch." She drew a spiral, then overlaid it with equations. "See how the numbers follow the same path? They're dancing." Something clicked in Ethan's mind, a small shift but significant. For a brief moment he glimpsed what Sophia saw, mathematics as a living, breathing entity with patterns and purpose. "How do you know all this?" he asked. "You're younger than me." Sophia's smile faded. "I've always seen it, but it makes people uncomfortable. Last year my teacher called me a liar when I solved a high school problem. She made me sit in the corner." Her small fingers traced the spiral. "Mum took me out of school after that. She cleans houses, and I teach myself." Ethan felt a pang of shame thinking of his private school with its state-of-the-art facilities and his complaints about it. "Does your dad know that you're so smart?" Sophia shook her head. "He left when I was 3. Mum says he couldn't handle it, having a weird kid." The distant chime of the mansion's grandfather clock interrupted them. 10 o'clock. "I have to go," Ethan said, gathering his things. "My dad checks my room at 10:30. Sophia nodded. "Take this." She tore a page from her notebook, covered with strange diagrams. "Practice seeing the dance. Tomorrow we'll try science." As Ethan hurried back across the moonlit garden, he felt something he hadn't experienced in years: hope. Inside the main house, Elena Rodriguez was dusting the library when James Maxwell entered unexpectedly. "Sir," she startled, nearly dropping her feather duster. "I thought you were on your call with Tokyo." James's expression was unreadable. "Where's your daughter tonight, Elena?" Elena's heart skipped. "In the staff quarters, sir. Sleeping." James stared at her for a long moment. "I saw lights in the garden house." Probably just the automatic timers for the plants, sir." "Probably." His tone made it clear he didn't believe her. "Elena, how long has your daughter been coming to work with you?" "Just during school breaks, sir. She's no trouble." "That's not what I asked." James's eyes narrowed. "How old is she now? 6? 7? 7, sir." James nodded slowly. "I'd like to meet her properly tomorrow." As he turned to leave, Elena clutched her duster tightly. "May I ask why, sir?" James paused at the door. "Let's just say I'm suddenly very interested in children with special abilities." Morning sunlight streamed through the Maxwell Mansion's east wing, illuminating the breakfast room where Ethan sat pushing eggs around his plate. Across from him, James Maxwell typed furiously on his tablet, pausing occasionally to sip black coffee. The silence between them stretched like a chasm. "Doctor, Harrington's office called," James said without looking up. "Your testing is scheduled for Friday." Ethan's fork clattered against fine china. "What testing?" "Comprehensive cognitive assessment. They'll figure out what's wrong with you." "There's nothing wrong with me," Ethan protested, his voice stronger than usual. James finally looked up, eyebrows raised at his son's defiance. "Your academic performance suggests otherwise." Before Ethan could respond, Eleanor entered with a fresh pot of coffee. Behind her trailed Sophia, wearing a simple blue dress, her dark hair neatly braided. "Ah," James set down his tablet, "you must be Eleanor's daughter." Sophia nodded politely. "Yes, sir. Sophia Rodriguez." James studied her with unexpected intensity. "How old are you, Sophia?" 7 years and 4 months, sir." "And do you enjoy school?" Sophia glanced at her mother, who gave an almost imperceptible nod. "I'm homeschooled now, sir." "Interesting." James leaned forward. "And why is that?" Elena intervened. "Sir, if Sophia is bothering you, she can wait in the—" "She's not bothering me. Quite the contrary." James's smile didn't reach his eyes. "I'm curious why such a bright-looking child isn't in school." Sophia met his gaze with surprising steadiness. "Regular school didn't work for me, sir." "It's not working for my son either," James replied dryly. "Perhaps you two have something in common." Ethan shot Sophia a warning look, which James caught immediately. "You two have met?" James asked sharply. "Just around the house, Dad," Ethan mumbled. James's phone buzzed. Checking it, he stood abruptly. "Emergency board meeting. We'll continue this discussion later." He pointed at Ethan. "Study for your science test. No distractions." After he left, Ethan exhaled shakily. "He knows something." Sophia shrugged. "It doesn't matter. We don't have much time before your test. Meet me in the library after you finish breakfast." Elena grabbed her daughter's arm. "Sophia, what are you doing? Mr. Maxwell is already asking questions." "I'm helping Ethan, Mama. And if we lose this job, where will we go?" Sophia's expression remained determined. "We always find a way." An hour later, Ethan found Sophia in the mansion's vast library, surrounded by open science textbooks. "How did you get all these?" he asked, amazed. "Your dad's study has everything," Sophia replied. "Now listen carefully. The test is on ecosystems, right? Forget memorizing facts. Science is like math, it's all connected." She began drawing diagrams, showing how energy flowed through ecosystems like equations, through mathematical systems. Once again, Ethan found himself seeing connections he'd missed before. "It's like each animal is a number in an equation," he realized aloud. Sophia beamed. "Exactly. You're starting to see the patterns." By lunchtime, Ethan had grasped concepts that had eluded him all semester. But as they worked, neither child noticed the small camera hidden among the library books, its lens focused directly on them, transmitting to James Maxwell's private office downtown. James watched the footage on his monitor, expression inscrutable. Beside him sat Dr. Harrington, a stern woman in her 50s. "Extraordinary," she murmured. "The girl is clearly gifted. Self-taught?" "Apparently," James replied. "Could she be what we're looking for?" "Possibly, but your son's interaction with her is equally interesting. Look how he's responding." On screen, Ethan was animatedly explaining a concept back to Sophia, his face lit with understanding. "I've never seen him engage like this," James admitted. "Because she's teaching him differently," Dr. Harrington observed. "She's teaching him to see patterns, not memorize facts. It's how prodigies naturally learn." James tapped his fingers thoughtfully. "I want them both tested. The girl's mother might object." "Everyone has a price, Doctor." James's eyes never left the screen. Everyone! Back in the library, Sophia suddenly shivered. "What's wrong?" Ethan asked. Sophia looked around uneasily. "Nothing. Just felt like someone was watching us." Ethan laughed. "In this house?" "Probably. Dad has cameras everywhere." Sophia froze. "Everywhere, even here?" "Maybe. Why?" Sophia began gathering the books hastily. "We need to be more careful. Your dad can't know what I'm really teaching you." "Why not?" Sophia's eyes were serious again, ancient in her young face. "Because some secrets are worth more than money. And your dad looks at me like I'm something he wants to buy." The science test sat on Ethan's desk, questions staring back at him like familiar friends rather than intimidating strangers. For the first time he saw the patterns Sophia had taught him, the dance of atoms, the flow of energy, the connections between seemingly disparate facts. His pencil moved confidently across the paper. Ms. Winters, his science teacher, watched him with surprise. Ethan Maxwell never finished tests early, yet here he was, setting down his pencil with 20 minutes remaining, a small smile playing on his lips. "Finished already, Ethan?" she asked, approaching his desk. "Yes, ma'am," he replied, a new confidence in his voice. As Ms. Winters scanned his test, her eyebrows rose progressively higher. Not only were the multiple-choice questions correct, but his explanations showed understanding rather than memorization. "This is excellent work," she said carefully. "May I ask what changed?" Ethan thought of Sophia and their secret sessions. "I just started seeing things differently." After school, Ethan raced home, bursting through the mansion's front door with uncharacteristic enthusiasm. He found his father in the living room, engaged in tense conversation with Eleanor. "Dad, I think I did great on my science test today." James turned, surprised by his son's excitement. "That's good, Ethan." Eleanor stood rigidly, eyes downcast. "Mr. Maxwell, please reconsider. Sophia is just a child." Ethan's smile faltered. "What's going on?" James sighed. "Ethan, go to your room. This is between Mrs. Rodriguez and me." "No," Ethan said firmly. "Is this about Sophia?" "Ethan," his father warned. "She's been helping me," Ethan blurted. "That's why I did well today. Sophia showed me how to see the patterns in science, just like she showed me with math." James's expression shifted from annoyance to intrigue. "So you admit you've been meeting with her?" "Yes," Ethan lifted his chin. "And I'm learning more from her than from all those expensive tutors combined." Elena covered her face. "Ethan, please." James was silent for a long moment. Then he turned to Elena. "I've changed my mind. I'm not sending Sophia for private testing." Elena's relief was palpable. "Thank you, sir." "Instead," James continued, "I want her to formally tutor Ethan, 2 hours daily after school. I'll pay triple your current hourly wage for these sessions." Elena's eyes widened. "Sir? She's getting results where others have failed," James said pragmatically. "I'm simply investing in what works." "But she's 7 years old," Elena protested. "A 7-year-old prodigy," James corrected. "Who just did what 4 professional educators couldn't." Ethan looked between them, confused by his father's sudden reversal. "So, Sophia can keep helping me?" "Yes," James nodded. "In fact, I want to observe one of these sessions. Today." "No!" Sophia's voice came from the doorway, where she stood clutching her notebook. "The method only works in private, no adults." James frowned. "That's not acceptable." "It's true, Dad," Ethan insisted. "It's about trust. Having someone watch makes it harder to see the patterns." James studied his son's earnest face, then Sophia's determined one. Something flickered in his expression, recognition perhaps. "Fine. Private sessions, but I expect results, Ethan. Significant improvement in all subjects within 2 weeks." "There will be," Ethan promised. After James left, Elena embraced Sophia tightly. "What have you gotten us into, Mija?" Sophia watched the doorway where James had disappeared. "Something dangerous," she whispered, "but necessary." Later that evening in his home office, James placed a call. "Dr. Harrington, the plans have changed. I want monitoring equipment installed in the garden house. No cameras, the girl's too observant. Audio only and sensors to track brain activity remotely." He paused. "Yes, I know it's experimental. That's why I fund your research." Another pause. "Because I recognize what she is, Doctor. Sofia Rodriguez isn't just a prodigy. She's exactly what we've been searching for." Meanwhile, in the garden house, Sophia was teaching Ethan to see words the way she saw numbers. "Letters dance too," she explained. "They make patterns, tell stories." "Is that how you learned to read so young?" Ethan asked. Sophia nodded. "I was reading it too. Mom says it scared people." "Doesn't it scare you? Being so different?" Sophia considered this, her small face solemn in the lamplight. "Sometimes, but being ordinary scares me more." "I'm definitely ordinary," Ethan sighed. "No," Sophia said firmly. "You're learning to see. That makes you special too." She hesitated. "Ethan, your dad is planning something. I can feel it." "What do you mean?" "The way he looks at me. Like I'm a puzzle he wants to solve." She gripped his hand suddenly. "Promise you won't tell him everything I show you. Some secrets have to stay ours." Ethan nodded, sensing the weight of her words without fully understanding them. "I promise." What neither child knew was that beneath the garden house floorboards, newly installed sensors were already recording their brainwave patterns, sending data to a laboratory where Dr. Harrington watched in fascination as two distinct neural signatures, one developing, one extraordinary, began to synchronize. "Remarkable," she murmured. "The prodigy is actually reshaping his neural pathways." Indeed, the Maxwell Technologies corporate headquarters dominated the Boston skyline, 70 floors of glass and steel reflecting the autumn sunlight. In the penthouse boardroom, James Maxwell paced before floor-to-ceiling windows, his reflection ghosting over the city below. 2 weeks of these sessions, he told the assembled executives and scientists, and my son's academic performance has completely transformed. Dr. Harrington nodded, pulling up a series of brain scans on the massive display screen. "These show Ethan's neural activity before and after working with Sophia. The changes are unprecedented." "Oh, how is this possible?" asked Dr. Chen, the company's chief of neuroscience research. "The girl's methodology is unique," Dr. Harrington explained. "She's not teaching conventional academics. She's teaching perception, pattern recognition at an intuitive level." James stopped pacing. "And can it be replicated?" An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. "That's what we're all wondering, isn't it?" James continued. "Can Sofia Rodriguez's gift be systematized, taught to others, marketed?" "Sir," Dr. Chen ventured, "the ethical implications of using a child subject are irrelevant," James cut in. "My educational software division is losing ground to competitors. Parents will pay anything to give their children an advantage." His eyes gleamed. "Imagine the market for a program that could teach ordinary children to think like prodigies." Dr. Harrington shifted uneasily. "We're still far from understanding how Sophia's methods work neurologically." "Then get closer," James ordered. "I want a prototype within 6 months." Back at the Maxwell mansion, Ethan burst through the front door, waving a paper triumphantly. "Sophia, look!" He raced toward the kitchen where Sophia and Elena were preparing dinner. "A+ on my English essay," Sophia grinned, wiping her hands on a towel. "Let me see." The essay was titled Patterns in Poetry, analyzing structures in ways far beyond standard 5th-grade curriculum. Red comments from his teacher filled the margins. "Extraordinary insight. College-level analysis. Where did this come from, Ethan?" "This is just the beginning," Sophia whispered excitedly. "Next week we start on languages. They're all connected by pattern families." Elena watched them with growing concern. Over the past 2 weeks, she'd noticed strange men visiting the estate, speaking in hushed tones with James, engineers installing upgrades to the garden house. And most worrying, the way James studied Sophia during their increasingly frequent encounters, calculating, assessing. "Sophia," Eleanor interrupted, "we need to talk, privately." In the staff quarters' small bathroom, the one place Eleanor was certain had no surveillance, she knelt before her daughter. "Mija, I think we should leave this job," she said softly in Spanish. Sophia's eyes widened. "But Ethan needs me. I'm worried about you. Mr. Maxwell is too interested in your abilities. I'm being careful, Mama." Elena shook her head. "There are things you don't understand. Yesterday I overheard him on the phone discussing neural mapping and cognitive pattern extraction. He mentioned your name." Sophia went very still. "He's studying me." "Yes, and I'm afraid of what happens when he gets what he wants." That evening, as Ethan and Sophia worked in the garden house, Ethan noticed her distraction. "What's wrong?" "You keep looking at the walls." Sophia lowered her voice to a whisper. "Your father is recording our sessions." "What? How do you know?" "I can feel it." She tapped her temple. "The same way I feel patterns. There's technology here, listening, measuring." Ethan looked around nervously. "Why would he do that?" Sophia's expression was grim beyond her years. "To take what I know without needing me." Understanding dawned on Ethan's face. "Maxwell Educational Technologies. Dad's been talking about a new project, some revolutionary learning system." Sophia nodded. "Based on me, on my brain. That's stealing." "Yes." Ethan's face hardened with resolve. "We have to stop him." Sophia smiled sadly. "How? He's your father. He's powerful." "So are we," Ethan insisted. "You've taught me to see patterns. Now let's use that to find a way out." Unknown to them, in his downtown office, James Maxwell listened to their conversation live, a troubled expression crossing his face. He reached for the intercom. "Janet, get my lawyer on the phone. I need to discuss intellectual property rights regarding minors." He paused. "And find out everything you can about Elena Rodriguez's immigration status." As he waited, James opened his desk drawer and removed an old photograph. Himself at 10 years old, standing beside a science fair project, expression miserable. Written across the bottom in his mother's handwriting, "James, another failure. When will you be like your brother?" He stared at it for a long moment, then at the brain scans of his son showing new neural pathways forming, pathways mirroring Sophia's. "I was asking the wrong question," he murmured. "It's not about marketing her method, it's about replicating her." Rain pounded against the windows of Westfield Academy's administrative office as Principal Hughes reviewed Ethan Maxwell's latest test scores with increasing disbelief. "This is remarkable," she told James, who sat opposite her desk. "Ethan has gone from failing to the top percentile in every subject in just 1 month." James nodded, expression carefully neutral. "I found him a suitable tutor." "Must be quite a tutor," Hughes commented. "These results are unprecedented in my 30 years of education." "I'm considering having Ethan skip to 7th grade next semester," James said. Hughes hesitated. "Academically, these scores would support that. But socially, his social development is not my concern," James interrupted. "His intelligence is what matters." The principal studied him. "Mr. Maxwell, forgive my frankness, but this sudden change is so dramatic, some teachers have expressed concerns." James's eyes narrowed. "What kind of concerns?" "Whether Ethan came by these results honestly." James stood abruptly. "Are you suggesting my son is cheating?" "Not at all," Hughes backpedaled. "But perhaps his tutor is doing more than teaching?" "Test him," James challenged. "Right now, in your office on any subject. I guarantee he'll prove his knowledge." Meanwhile, at the Maxwell estate, Sophia sat cross-legged on her bed, surrounded by papers covered in strange symbols, a language of her own creation. Elena entered, carrying a basket of laundry. "What's this, Mika?" "A code," Sophia replied without looking up. "To protect our secrets." Elena set down the basket. "Sophia, I spoke with my cousin in Arizona. She can take us in until I find new work." Sophia finally looked up. "We can't leave yet, Mama. It's getting dangerous. Yesterday, Mr. Maxwell asked for my green card. He's never done that before." "He's trying to scare you," Sophia said, "because he knows I'm teaching Ethan more than schoolwork now." "What does that mean?" Sophia's eyes were intense. "I'm teaching him to see the patterns in people too, how they think, what they want, how they try to control others." Elena sat heavily on the bed. "Dios mío, Sophia, you're 7 years old. You shouldn't be fighting battles with billionaires." "I'm not," Sophia said simply. "I'm teaching Ethan to fight his own battles." At that moment, across town, Ethan sat in Principal Hugh's office with a geography textbook open before him. "The major exports of Indonesia include petroleum, palm oil and textiles," he explained confidently. "Its location along major shipping lanes makes it strategically important for global trade, especially with its control of the Strait of Malacca." Hughes exchanged glances with James. "That's university-level analysis, Ethan." Ethan smiled. "Sophia says geography is just patterns of resources, transportation, and human needs." "Sophia?" Hughes questioned. "My tutor," Ethan replied, then faltered, seeing his father's warning look. "Well," Hughes closed the book, "I'm convinced these improvements are genuine, extraordinary, but genuine." As they left the school, rain soaking into their shoulders during the brief dash to the waiting car, James gripped Ethan's arm. "You need to be more careful about mentioning Sophia," he warned. "Why? You're the one who hired her to tutor me." "It's complicated, Ethan." "Because she's the housekeeper's daughter, or because you're studying her brain patterns without permission?" James froze, his face hardening. "What do you know about that?" "Everything," Ethan said quietly. "Sophia taught me to recognize surveillance technology. We found the sensors in the garden house." For the first time in Ethan's memory, his father looked genuinely rattled. "That's proprietary research." "It's illegal," Ethan countered. "Sophia is a minor. You need parental consent for research subjects." "And when did you become an expert on research ethics?" "Since Sophia taught me to read at a college level," Ethan replied evenly. "I found your company's ethics guidelines online and federal research regulations." James stared at his son as if seeing him for the first time. "She's changed you." "She helped me," Ethan corrected. "There's a difference." That evening, James sat alone in his study, a tumbler of whiskey untouched before him, staring at a monitor displaying Sophia's brain activity during that day's tutoring session. The patterns were beautiful, complex, unlike anything his researchers had ever recorded. His phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Harrington. "Breakthrough in the neural mapping, ready to attempt first digital simulation of her cognitive patterns." James didn't respond immediately. Instead, he opened a drawer and pulled out a small, worn notebook, one he hadn't looked at in decades. Inside were crude drawings of patterns, numbers arranged in spirals, equations that made no sense to conventional mathematics. His childhood attempts to explain how he saw the world, before his parents' constant disappointment, forced him to abandon his natural way of thinking. The same patterns Sophia was now teaching his son. James closed the notebook, a decision crystallizing. He picked up his phone and typed, "Terminate the project immediately. Destroy all research data." Then he headed toward the garden house, where light still shone despite the late hour. It was time for a different kind of conversation with the young prodigy who had awakened something long buried, not just in his son, but in himself. What he didn't know was that Sophia had been expecting this moment all along. Sophia was arranging pattern cards on the garden house floor when the door opened. She didn't look up. "I've been waiting for you, Mr. Maxwell," she said calmly. James Maxwell stood in the doorway, rain dripping from his expensive coat. "How did you know I was coming?" Sophia finally raised her eyes. "Patterns. People follow them just like numbers do." James stepped inside, surveying the space where his surveillance equipment had been carefully hidden. "My son tells me you found my sensors. They buzz at a frequency most people can't hear," Sophia explained, "but I can." James studied the small girl, her composure unsettling for a 7-year-old. He noticed the pattern cards on the floor, complex mathematical sequences he recognized from his own childhood. "You've been teaching my son what you see," he said, gesturing to the cards, "how numbers make pictures, how patterns connect everything." Sophia tilted her head. "You see them too, or you used to." James stiffened. "What makes you say that?" "Your notebook, the one in your desk drawer. I saw it when I was looking for paper clips." Her eyes met his directly. "Those are my patterns too." For a moment, James looked genuinely shaken. Then his business mask returned. "What exactly do you want, Sophia?" "For you to stop recording our sessions. Stop studying my brain and promise my mother's job is safe." That's quite a list of demands from a child. "I'm not just a child," Sophia replied evenly. "That's why you're afraid of me." James laughed, but it sounded hollow. "I'm not afraid of you." "Yes, you are, because I'm what you could have been if you hadn't stopped seeing the patterns." She picked up one of her cards. "This is the same spiral you drew in your notebook when you were my age, but you gave up." James's face darkened. "I didn't give up. I was forced to conform. And now you're doing the same to Ethan." "No," James shook his head. "I hired you to teach him. After threatening my mother's job. After installing sensors to steal my methods." Sophia stood, her small frame somehow commanding. "You want what I have, without understanding what it costs." "And what does it cost?" James asked quietly. Sophia's expression softened slightly. "Loneliness. Being different hurts, Mr. Maxwell, you know that." Something vulnerable flickered across James's face before he masked it. "My researchers have enough data. I've terminated the project." "But not the ambition behind it," Sophia countered. James studied her for a long moment. "You're extraordinary, Sophia. A mind like yours appears perhaps once in a generation. It should be nurtured, studied, not exploited," she finished. "I'll keep teaching Ethan, but on my terms. No monitoring, no research, just teaching. And if I refuse," Sophia smiled sadly, "then you'll lose him. Not his body, but his mind, the part that's finally waking up." She gathered her pattern cards. "He's starting to see the world as it really is. Do you really want to take that away from him?" James Maxwell, who had built an empire by always having the upper hand, found himself at a loss. Before him stood a 7-year-old girl who somehow held the power in this exchange. "1 month," he finally said. "Prove to me that this method works long-term, and I'll consider your terms." As he turned to leave, Sophia called after him. "Mr. Maxwell, the patterns never really left you. They're just buried." James paused, hand on the doorknob. "Some things are better left buried." What James didn't say was that after leaving the garden house, he would sit in his car for nearly an hour, opening his childhood notebook, tracing patterns he'd been forced to forget, and feeling, for the first time in decades, the whisper of something he'd lost long ago. Snow dusted the Maxwell estate grounds as December arrived. In the mansion's grand dining room, something unprecedented was occurring. James Maxwell was having dinner with his son, Elena, and Sophia. The tension around the massive mahogany table was palpable. "6 weeks of tutoring," James commented, cutting his steak with precision. "Ethan's teachers report he's now performing at a high school level in most subjects." Sophia nodded, looking small in the ornate dining chair. "He sees the patterns clearly now." "Indeed." James turned to his son. Principal Hughes suggests you skip to 7th grade next semester. Ethan glanced at Sophia before answering. I'd rather stay with my class and do advanced work. Sophia says social connections are important for development. James raised an eyebrow. Does she? The brain needs balance, Sophia explained, carefully eating her mashed potatoes. Academic growth and emotional growth happen together. Elena remained silent, watching the exchange with obvious discomfort. You sound like a neurologist, not a second grader, James remarked. I read your company's neuroscience journals, Sophia replied calmly. They're in your study. A ghost of a smile touched James's lips. Of course you did. He turned to Eleanor. Your daughter is quite remarkable, Mrs. Rodriguez. Yes, sir, Elena answered cautiously. I've been thinking, James continued, setting down his utensils. Sophia's education shouldn't be limited to homeschooling. Her intellect deserves proper cultivation. Elena tensed. We manage fine, sir. I'd like to establish a trust fund for Sophia's education, James announced. The finest schools, university, whatever resources she needs. The offer hung in the air, unexpected and loaded with implications. Why? Elena asked bluntly. Let's call it gratitude for helping my son, James replied smoothly, or investment in exceptional talent. With what conditions? Sophia asked, her young voice cutting through the pretense. James studied her. Continued documentation of your teaching methods, quarterly cognitive assessments, nothing invasive. Still trying to unlock my brain, Mr. Maxwell? Sophia's directness would have been shocking from any other child. James didn't flinch. Still trying to understand it. Dad, Ethan interjected, you promised no more research. This is different, James insisted. This benefits Sophia directly. Eleanor stood abruptly. We don't need your charity, Mr. Maxwell. It's not charity, James countered. It's opportunity. Think of Sophia's future. I am, Elena replied firmly. Which is why we'll be leaving after Christmas. The announcement dropped like a stone. Leaving? Ethan's voice cracked. You can't. Sophia reached for his hand under the table. My grandmother in Arizona is sick. Mom needs to care for her. James's expression hardened. Mrs. Rodriguez, you signed a 1-year contract. I'll forfeit my remaining pay, Elena replied, chin raised. That won't be necessary, James said coldly. You're fired. Dad, Ethan gasped. Effective immediately, James continued. You'll vacate the staff quarters by tomorrow morning. Sophia remained perfectly still, only her eyes revealing her distress. Sir, Elena began, but James cut her off. However, he raised a hand, I'm prepared to offer you a new position, triple your current salary, comprehensive health care, and a separate guest house on the property. In exchange, Sophia continues teaching Ethan, and, he hesitated, agrees to limited participation in my research program. The manipulation was transparent, even to Ethan. You can't do this, he protested. It's a generous offer, James replied evenly. Sophia spoke quietly. We accept. Sophia, her mother exclaimed. With one condition, Sophia continued, eyes locked with James. You participate too, Mr. Maxwell. James blinked. What? In the sessions. With Ethan and me. Sophia leaned forward. You still have the ability to see patterns. It's just dormant. The request visibly unsettled him. That's not part of the arrangement. It is now, Sophia insisted. You want to understand how my brain works? Experience it yourself. James Maxwell, master negotiator, found himself cornered by a 7-year-old girl at his own dinner table. One session, he finally conceded. As an observer. Sophia shook her head. As a participant, you need to remember what you lost. Something vulnerable flashed in James's eyes. What makes you think I lost anything? The way you look at me, Sophia said simply, like I have something that was taken from you. Later that night, as Elena packed their meager belongings in the staff quarters, she confronted her daughter. "Why did you agree to his terms, Mija? His research isn't safe." Sophia sat on her small bed, arranging pattern cards. "Because he's broken, Mama. Like I was before you taught me it was okay to be different." She looked up, her eyes ancient in her young face. "Ethan needs his father to understand him, and Mr. Maxwell needs to remember who he really is." Elena sighed, sitting beside her extraordinary daughter. "You're 7 years old, Sophia. It's not your job to fix broken billionaires." "No," Sophia agreed, "but it's my job to see patterns, and the pattern says this is the only way forward." What neither of them knew was that James Maxwell sat alone in his study, holding his childhood notebook, a single tear tracking down his face as he traced equations he'd created at age 10, equations that had earned him his father's contempt and changed the course of his life. Christmas Eve transformed the Maxwell mansion into a showcase of tasteful opulence. Crystal chandeliers sparkled over designer decorations, a 12-foot Norwegian spruce dominated the foyer, and staff in formal uniforms circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres among Boston's elite. James Maxwell moved through his annual holiday gathering with practiced charm, every inch the successful CEO. But his eyes repeatedly drifted to a corner of the grand room where Ethan sat with Sophia. The two children huddled over what appeared to be a game, but was actually a complex pattern exercise, disguised as Christmas puzzles. "Your son has improved remarkably this semester," commented Dr. Lenore Whiting, headmistress of Westfield Academy. "The faculty is quite impressed." "Yes," James replied distantly, watching Sophia explain something to Ethan, her small hands moving in the air as if tracing invisible connections. "Though I must say, Doctor," Whiting continued, following his gaze, "I'm curious about this prodigy tutor everyone's whispering about. Is that her? The housekeeper's daughter?" James turned his attention back to his guest. "Sophia is consulting on a special education project for Maxwell Technologies. At her age? How unusual." "She's exceptional," James said simply. Across the room, Elena Rodriguez, now dressed in elegant attire befitting her new position as household manager, served drinks with the quiet dignity that had always characterized her work. The promotion had raised eyebrows among the staff and Boston society alike. Senator Wilson sidled up to James, lowering his voice conspiratorially. "Quite generous of you, Maxwell, elevating the help like that. Though I hear there's more to the story, something about her daughter being some kind of genius?" James's expression cooled. "Sophia Rodriguez is participating in an educational research project, nothing more." Of course," the senator backpedaled. "Just curious why you'd take such personal interest in, if you'll excuse me," James cut him off, moving purposefully toward Ethan and Sophia. As the evening progressed, James found himself increasingly distant from his own party, his thoughts circling back to the promise he'd made to participate in one of Sophia's sessions. Tomorrow morning, Christmas Day. The prospect filled him with unexpected anxiety. Near midnight, as guests began departing, Dr. Harrington approached him in a quiet moment. "The new neural mapping equipment is installed in the lab," she informed him. "We can begin more comprehensive studies after the holidays." James watched Sophia helping Eleanor collect empty glasses, the child moving with surprising grace and awareness. "There will be no further studies," he said quietly. Dr. Harrington frowned. "But, sir, we're on the verge of breakthrough. The preliminary data from Sophia's sessions with Ethan shows—" "I said no," James interrupted sharply. "Project Prometheus is terminated." "May I ask why?" James didn't immediately answer. His gaze drifted to the massive Christmas tree where Ethan was hanging a final ornament, a small, handmade star that looked out of place among the designer decorations. "Sophia made it," James said, almost to himself. "Sir, the star, She made it for Ethan. Out of paper and glitter. He turned to Dr. Harrington. Do you know what she told him when she gave it to him? That stars are patterns of light that help us navigate when we're lost. Dr. Harrington looked confused. I don't understand what this has to do with our research. Neither did I, James admitted, until recently. After the last guest departed, James found himself alone in his study, nursing a glass of scotch. A soft knock interrupted his solitude. Come in, he called, expecting the night staff. Instead, Sophia entered, still in her party dress, but looking tired. You should be in bed, James said, surprised. So should you, Sophia replied. Big day tomorrow. James smiled despite himself. Are you nervous about our session? No, Sophia answered honestly. But you are. James didn't deny it. What exactly will happen tomorrow, Sophia? The girl approached his desk, her expression solemn. You'll remember. Remember what? Who you were before they made you forget. But James set down his glass. You can't possibly know about that. I don't need to know the details, Sophia said. I can see the pattern. It's in how you look at me when you think no one's watching. How you trace equations in the air with your finger sometimes. How you recognize my methods instantly. James felt exposed in a way no business rival had ever managed. My father believed mathematical intuition was a crutch, he said suddenly. He demanded rigorous, step-by-step proofs for everything. But that's not how your mind worked, Sophia guessed. No. James gazed out the window at the snow-covered grounds. I saw answers, patterns, connections, but I couldn't explain how I got there. So you learned to think differently, to be what he wanted. James nodded slowly. By the time I was 12, I'd trained myself to approach problems conventionally. I buried the intuitive part of myself so deeply I forgot it existed. Until you saw me teaching Ethan, Sophia finished. Yes. James turned back to her. Tomorrow, will it hurt? Remembering? Sophia regarded him with compassion beyond her years. Yes, but staying forgotten hurts more. As she left, James opened his desk drawer and removed his childhood notebook one more time. This Christmas Eve, instead of business strategies or acquisition plans, James Maxwell studied the forgotten language of his own mind, preparing to rediscover what he'd lost 4 decades ago. The garden house glowed with soft light on Christmas morning as James approached through freshly fallen snow. Inside, Ethan and Sophia had arranged cushions in a triangle on the floor, surrounded by pattern cards, notebooks, and strange 3-dimensional models built from pipe cleaners and beads. James hesitated at the threshold. I'm not sure this is appropriate. It's Christmas morning. This is our gift to you, Dad, Ethan said earnestly. Sophia patted the empty cushion. Please sit, Mr. Maxwell. With uncharacteristic uncertainty, James lowered himself onto the cushion, looking uncomfortable in his casual holiday sweater and slacks. Now what? He asked. Close your eyes, Sophia instructed, and listen. For the next hour, Sophia guided father and son through a series of mental exercises, visualizations, pattern recognitions, mathematical meditations. She spoke softly, her voice a gentle current, carrying them deeper into modes of perception long dormant in James and newly awakening in Ethan. Numbers aren't just symbols, Sophia explained. They're landscapes, relationships, stories. She placed a card before James. What do you see? James stared at the apparently random arrangement of numbers. A sequence. Fibonacci adjacent, but with... He stopped, blinking rapidly. What is it, Dad? Ethan asked. I see. James's voice faltered. A spiral, growing outward, but also music. That doesn't make sense. Sophia smiled. It does to me. The pattern resonates at specific frequencies. You're hearing the mathematics. James looked stunned. I used to tell my mother that equations made sounds. She thought I was being difficult. You weren't, Sophia assured him. Your brain was making connections others couldn't understand. As the session progressed, James became increasingly engaged, decades of forced convention falling away as he rediscovered his natural cognitive patterns. When Sophia had them map emotional states using mathematical coordinates, James completed the exercise with surprising intuition. The coordinate system for empathy follows a non-Euclidean progression, he observed, then looked startled at his own insight. Sophia nodded. Exactly. Human emotions don't move in straight lines. Ethan watched his father with fascination. Dad, you're really good at this. I was once, James admitted quietly, before I convinced myself this way of thinking was worthless. Near the end of the session, Sophia presented them with her most challenging exercise, a multi-dimensional problem that required seeing connections across disparate fields of knowledge. This is impossible, James protested after several minutes. There are too many variables. Stop trying to solve it sequentially, Sophia advised. See it all at once. James closed his eyes, his face tense with concentration. Then gradually, his expression relaxed. When he opened his eyes, they held a light Ethan had never seen before. It's beautiful, James whispered. What is? Ethan asked. The answer. It's not a single solution. It's a harmonizing principle. James quickly sketched a complex diagram, like this. Sophia examined his work, her small face solemn. Perfect. James stared at what he'd drawn, then at Sophia. How did you know I could still do this? Because you never really stopped, she said simply. You just buried it under rules and expectations and fear. Fear? Of being different, of disappointing people, of not being taken seriously. James fell silent, the truth of her words sinking in. When the session ended, the three sat quietly as snow fell outside the garden house windows. Finally, James spoke. I understand now, Sophia. What you've been teaching my son isn't just academics, it's freedom. Sophia nodded. The freedom to see the world as it really is, not how others tell you to see it. James turned to Ethan, really looking at his son perhaps for the first time. I've been pushing you toward conventional success because I thought it was the only valid path. I was wrong. Ethan's eyes widened. Really? Really? James hesitated, then added, I'm sorry, Ethan, for not seeing you clearly. As they walked back to the main house for Christmas dinner, James placed a hand on Sophia's shoulder. No more research projects. No more sensors or data collection. He looked down at her seriously. But I'd still like to provide for your education, no strings attached. Sophia studied his face, reading the sincerity there. Thank you, Mr. Maxwell. James, he corrected, I think we're beyond formalities now. Inside the mansion, Elena waited anxiously, her face relaxing when she saw Sophia return with a transformed James Maxwell, not just in his surprisingly rumpled appearance, but in the open wonder on his face, so different from his usual calculated mask. That evening, after presents had been exchanged and Christmas dinner enjoyed, James made a phone call from his study. Dr. Harrington, I'm not just terminating Project Prometheus, I'm shutting down the entire cognitive restructuring division. He paused, listening to her protests. No, this isn't negotiable. Some kinds of knowledge aren't meant to be packaged and sold. As he hung up, James noticed Sophia standing in the doorway. You heard? He asked. She nodded. It was the right decision. How can someone your age be so wise? James wondered aloud. Sophia smiled. I'm not wise. I just see patterns clearly. The pattern of what would happen if we tried to commercialize your gift, James guessed. Yes, Sophia said simply, and the pattern of what can happen now that you remember yours. The winter thawed into spring, bringing remarkable changes to the Maxwell household. The garden house, once a secret classroom, had been transformed into a proper learning space with tools for both conventional and intuitive education. Most surprising to the staff was the regular presence of James Maxwell himself, shirt sleeves rolled up, deeply engaged in what he called perception exercises with Ethan and Sophia. Elena Rodriguez, now comfortably settled in the estate's guest house and officially employed as educational coordinator, watched the transformation with cautious optimism. "I never thought I'd see a millionaire sitting cross-legged on the floor, playing with pattern blocks," she commented one April afternoon as she and James observed the children working through a complex visualization exercise. James smiled ruefully. "Neither did I. But here we are." The changes extended beyond the estate. At Maxwell Technologies, James had redirected research funding from cognitive extraction to educational accessibility, developing programs to help children with different learning styles. The corporate board had initially resisted until James demonstrated the potential with pilot programs in Boston public schools. "The preliminary results are extraordinary," Dr. Chen reported during a board meeting. "Students previously labeled as underperforming are showing remarkable progress when taught to access their natural cognitive patterns." Not everyone was convinced. Senator Wilson, whose family held significant Maxwell Technologies stock, cornered James at a charity gala. "This educational crusade is all very touching, Maxwell, but shareholders are concerned about the bottom line. Your stock is down 8% this quarter." James remained unruffled. "Short-term thinking, Senator. What we're developing will revolutionize education and prove highly profitable in time. This sudden philanthropy wouldn't have anything to do with that prodigy you've taken in, would it?" Wilson pressed. "There are whispers about private research, cognitive experiments." James's expression cooled. "Those programs have been terminated." "Shame," Wilson murmured. "My contacts at DARPA expressed interest in the applications. Military funding could have been substantial." "I'm not interested in weaponizing cognitive science," James replied firmly. The senator shrugged. "Your choice. But the board votes next month on your leadership. I'd reconsider your priorities before then." The threat lingered as spring advanced. While James focused on his new educational initiatives and his transformed relationship with Ethan, corporate politics simmered in the background. Elena noticed his increasing preoccupation during their weekly planning meetings. "Trouble at work?" she asked directly one evening. James sighed. "The board isn't pleased with our new direction. There's talk of ousting me as CEO. Can they do that? It's your company. I control 43% of shares. Not enough if the other major shareholders unite against me." James rubbed his temples. "They want to revive Project Prometheus." Elena tensed. "The research on Sophia?" "Not specifically on her anymore, but based on the data we already collected." James looked troubled. "They see billions in potential military and intelligence applications. And you don't want that?" "No." James's voice was firm. "What Sophia teaches is about understanding, connection, seeing the fullness of reality. Using it to manipulate or control others would be a perversion." Eleanor studied him thoughtfully. "You've changed, Mr. Maxwell." "James," he corrected automatically, then smiled. "And yes, I have." In the garden house, oblivious to the corporate machinations, Sophia was leading Ethan through an advanced exercise in emotional mathematics, mapping human feelings as intersecting wave functions. "Happiness isn't a point, but a range," she explained, drawing curves on a whiteboard. "It exists in relation to other emotions, not in isolation." Ethan nodded, adding his own curves to the diagram. "Like how my dad's changed. He moves between these states differently now." Sophia smiled. "Exactly. His pattern is harmonizing." "He's happier," Ethan said simply, "even with the board problems." Sophia's hand paused mid-drawing. What board problems? Ethan looked uncomfortable. I overheard him talking on the phone. Some people want to take the company away from him because of the new education projects. Sophia set down her marker, expression troubled. When is the vote? Next month, I think. That night, after Ethan had gone to bed, Sophia sat cross-legged on her bedroom floor, surrounded by complex diagrams and flowcharts. Elena found her there past midnight. Mia, what are you doing? It's late. Sophia didn't look up from her work. Mapping outcomes, Mama. Something's coming. Eleanor knelt beside her daughter, concerned by the intensity in her young face. What do you mean? Sophia finally met her mother's eyes. Mr. Maxwell, James, is in danger of losing his company because he's protecting what I taught him. She gestured to her diagrams. I've calculated 17 potential scenarios. In 12 of them, he loses everything. Sophia, corporate politics isn't your concern. You're 7 years old. Almost 8, Sophia corrected absently, returning to her calculations. And it is my concern. James remembered who he really is because of me. I can't let him lose everything because of it. Elena sighed, recognizing the determined set of her daughter's jaw. What are you planning? Sophia's expression was grave beyond her years. Something risky, but I see no alternative pattern. The next morning, while James was at corporate headquarters and Ethan at school, Sophia asked Elena to take her to Maxwell Technologies' main building. Absolutely not, Elena refused. Whatever you're planning, please, Mama, Sophia interrupted. I need to see something, just one visit. Elena hesitated, then relented. 1 hour, no interaction with anyone. We observe only. But as they toured the gleaming headquarters as supposed visitors, Sophia's true purpose became clear. She wasn't just observing, she was absorbing everything. Security protocols, office layouts, the corporate structure displayed on lobby directories. What are you really doing? Elena whispered, as Sophia studied a company organizational chart with unnerving focus. Sophia's reply was disturbingly calm, preparing to save James from his own board. I've seen the pattern, Mama. Now I just need to change it. The Maxwell Technologies boardroom hushed as James entered for the fateful vote. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the tense faces of 13 board members seated around the massive table. Senator Wilson sat at the far end, a satisfied smile playing on his lips. James, the board chairman greeted coldly, we've reviewed your educational initiatives and the recent decline in shareholder value. The board has concerns about the company's direction. James nodded calmly. I'm aware, Harold. Before we proceed to the vote of confidence, the chairman continued, is there anything you'd like to say? James surveyed the room, noting which faces showed sympathy and which anticipation. Only that Maxwell Technologies was founded to expand human potential, not exploit it. These educational initiatives honor that original mission. Senator Wilson scoffed. Poetic, but hardly compelling from a business perspective. With respect, Senator, James replied evenly, you've never understood what this company truly represents. I understand profit margins, Wilson retorted, and yours are falling while potentially valuable military applications sit idle. The chairman raised a hand to silence the exchange. Let's proceed with the vote. The boardroom doors swung open, revealing an unexpected figure. Sophia Rodriguez, dressed formally in a simple blue dress, her dark hair neatly braided. Behind her stood Elena, looking deeply uncomfortable. Ms. Rodriguez, the chairman frowned. This is a closed meeting. I apologize for the interruption, Sophia said, her young voice clear and steady. But before you vote, there's something the board should see. James stared at her in confusion. Sophia, what are you doing here? Without answering, Sophia approached the boardroom's presentation system and connected a small drive. The main screen illuminated with complex diagrams and projections. These are probability mappings, Sophia explained, as the board members exchanged bewildered glances. Calculated outcomes for Maxwell Technologies under different leadership scenarios. "Young lady," Senator Wilson began condescendingly, "this is hardly—" "If you remove James Maxwell as CEO," Sophia continued undeterred, "and pursue military applications of cognitive science, initial profits will indeed spike approximately 23% over 2 quarters. The board members straightened with interest. However, Sophia switched to the next slide, displaying a downward trajectory. Ethical concerns will trigger regulatory scrutiny within 8 months. By year 3, lawsuits and international restrictions will devalue the company by 62%. "This is absurd," Wilson sputtered. "She's a child." Sophia turned to him directly. "A child who can calculate multivariable probability matrices, Senator. The same ability your consultants from Meridian Analytics used to produce your growth projections, just more accurately." Wilson paled. "How do you know about Meridian?" "Pattern recognition," Sophia replied simply, then turned back to the board. "The alternative, continuing James Maxwell's educational initiatives, shows slower initial growth but sustainable expansion into global markets with minimal regulatory resistance." She displayed the final slide, projected 15-year growth, 340% versus 78% under the military application model. The boardroom fell silent as board members studied the projections with growing interest. "These numbers," the CFO finally spoke, "they're remarkably detailed. How did you generate them?" "The same way I taught Ethan Maxwell to go from failing grades to academic excellence in 6 weeks, Sophia answered, "by seeing patterns others miss." James had remained silent, watching with a mixture of astonishment and growing understanding. Now he stepped forward. "Board members, what you're witnessing is precisely what our educational initiatives aim to nurture, not just in privileged children, but in students across all socio-economic backgrounds," he gestured to Sophia. "This extraordinary mind developed without advantages, without expensive schools or enrichment programs. Imagine the untapped potential in classrooms everywhere." The chairman leaned forward. "These educational methods, they produce results like this?" "Not identical," Sophia interjected. "Every mind has its own pattern. But yes, significant cognitive enhancement across multiple domains." "And the military applications?" Senator Wilson demanded, attempting to regain control. "Would provide short-term gains at the cost of the company's future and ethical standing," James replied firmly, "as Sophia's projections clearly demonstrate." The vote that followed wasn't even close, 11-2 in favor of retaining James as CEO and continuing the educational initiatives. Senator Wilson stormed out before the meeting concluded. Afterward, in James's office, he faced Sophia and Elena with mixed emotions. "That was incredibly risky," he told Sophia. "The board could have dismissed you entirely." "The probability was low," Sophia replied. "I calculated an 83% chance of success." James shook his head, amazed. "You saved my company." "You saved yourself," Sophia corrected, "by remembering who you really are." She hesitated, then added, "The patterns showed me this was the optimal outcome for everyone. Your educational programs will help thousands of children who think differently." "Including you," James said softly. "Sophia, I'd like to establish a proper foundation, funding for your education through graduate level and research opportunities when you're ready." Eleanor started to object, but Sophia squeezed her hand. "We accept, with one condition." "Which is?" "The foundation helps other children like me too, especially those without resources." James smiled. "I was already drafting those plans." That evening back at the Maxwell estate, Ethan raced to meet them as they returned. Did it work? Did Dad keep the company? Sophia nodded, suddenly looking like the 7-year-old she was after hours of extraordinary composure. The pattern held. James watched as the two children ran off toward the garden house, Sophia already explaining some new insight to his enraptured son. Eleanor came to stand beside him. "She's remarkable," James said quietly. "Yes," Eleanor agreed, "but still a child who needs to play and laugh and sometimes just be ordinary." James nodded thoughtfully. "Balance. Another pattern Sophia's been teaching me." He turned to Elena. "Thank you for sharing your daughter's gift with us." "She chose to share it," Elena replied. "Sophia sees patterns in people too, who they can become when they remember their true selves." Inside the garden house, Sophia and Ethan sat surrounded by their books and pattern cards, but for once they weren't studying. They were simply drawing, like the children they were. "Will you still teach me now that the danger's past?" Ethan asked. Sophia looked up from her drawing, a complex spiral galaxy rendered in colored pencils. "Of course. We're just beginning." "Beginning what?" Sophia smiled, her eyes bright with the knowledge of patterns yet to unfold. "The next chapter." As the sun set over the Maxwell estate, 3 lives forever changed by an unlikely connection continued their shared journey. A brilliant child who saw the world as it truly was, a boy learning to trust his own perception, and a man who had rediscovered the self he'd been forced to forget. Different paths converging into a pattern more beautiful than any of them could have imagined alone.